This is a long overdue post. I just dug this up out of my record collection. It's titled "The Bank of West Virginia Presents Flight of Apollo 11." And I'll put more information on this record in the description. It's on two sides, so it's continued on side B when it comes to the end of side A. So here it is.
"4:18 p.m. Sunday, July 20th, 1969. The ears of hundreds of millions wait for a single voice from outer space.
113 is in. We copy you down, Eagle. Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
And man is on the moon, a historic milestone climaxing the dreams of man from virtually his very creation. A scientific triumph culminating a concentrated space effort called for in the spring of 1961 when the late President John Kennedy called for boldness in issuing a challenge to put America on the moon before the end of the decade.
But if I were to say, my fellow citizens, that we shall send to the moon a giant rocket carrying all the equipment needed for propulsion, guidance, control, communications, food, and survival on an untried mission, and do all this, and do do it right, and do it first before this decade is out, then we must be bold.
And America was bold. It did the job right, and it did it first. And it succeeded within the twilight of the decade as another president, in another speech, wrote the final chapter in man's space saga.
Real buzz and Mike, I want you to know that I think I'm the luckiest man in the world. And I say this not only because I have the honor to be President of the United States, but particularly because I have the privilege of speaking for so many and welcoming you back to Earth.
Apollo 11, an epic journey into the unknown. A flight that began in the early sunrise hours of Wednesday, July 16th.
For T-minus 30 minutes, 52 seconds and counting, aiming toward a planned liftoff time of 32 minutes past the hour. The start of our launch window on this mission to land men on the moon.
Cape Kennedy, Florida, USA. The giant Saturn V stood ready to unleash its 7.5 million pounds of thrust. Atop the awesome super rocket waited the Apollo 11 vehicle and its crew, consisting of the civilian spacecraft commander Neil A. Armstrong, along with Air Force Colonel Edwin E. Aldrin and Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Michael Collins.
This is Apollo Saturn launch control. We're now less than 16 minutes away from the planned liftoff of the Apollo 11 space vehicle. All still going well with the countdown at this time.
The minutes ticked off as the flawless countdown continued. 6.5 million pounds of Apollo Saturn might, poised against a blue but partially cloudy Florida sky. The crew methodically made their final checks some 363 feet in the air. They would go higher by some 218,096 miles.
T-minus 60 seconds and counting.
9:32 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower clear.
Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program that puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
And with a pulsating, crackling roar that was heard around the globe, the three men thundered off in their reach for a dream. First at 24,000 miles per hour while breaking from Earth's gravity, and then gradually slowing to 3,000 miles per hour in crossing the halfway point to the moon. They went about their celestial tasks and even found time and necessity for earthly duties.
Cooking and sleeping and almost going and the usual housekeeping things.
The water temperature's been good. Are you getting hot water?
And I take up the coffee today. It's pretty good. It's not piping hot, but it sure beats Stone Cold coffee.
An air of competitive suspense was added to the voyage when it was announced that an unmanned Soviet spaceship, Luna 15, had reached the moon and gone into orbit. Speculation grew as to whether, in fact, a space race might be developing between the two countries in making attempts to obtain moon samples, perhaps on the same day. But even in this climate of lunar competition, America again extended its hand of friendship as announced by the President.
When Frank Borman was in the Soviet Union, he was presented 2 medals from the wives of the cosmonauts, the Russian cosmonauts, who lost their lives in their space program. And at the request of their wives, he will leave those medals on the moon.
Target, the moon. Apollo 11 reached it at 1:22 p.m. Saturday. Just over 24 hours were spent in lunar orbit as final preparations were made and systems checked out for their date with history. That date was Sunday, July 20th, 1969. It began at 7:02 when the astronauts were awakened by mission control. By 10 a.m., Armstrong and Aldrin had climbed through the connecting tunnel between the Columbia command ship and the lunar module Eagle. With Collins in the command ship, the Eagle undocked in orbit behind the moon and out of radio contact at 1:47 p.m. Minutes later, however, both craft rounded the moon's rim, and Armstrong announced the separation.
Roger, how does it look? The Eagle has wings.
The Eagle has wings, reported Armstrong, and it began its descent to the moon's surface at 3:09.
Eagle, you're looking great. Coming up 9 minutes.
We're now in the approach phase, everything looking good.
Then, in the closing seconds of descent, an emergency decision. The lunar module Eagle was dropping into a crater the size of a football field and filled with rocks and boulders. Armstrong immediately went to manual control and, after maneuvering the landing craft to a smoother site, touched down with 49 seconds of fuel left.
Contact light. Okay, engine stop. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
And space at 4:18 p.m. Sunday, July 20th, 1969, was conquered. Orbiting 69 miles overhead, Collins was informed by Mission Control in Texas of the historic touchdown.
Roger, we ring goodbye by Columbia. He has landed. Tranquility Base. Eagle is at Tranquility. Over. Yeah, I heard the whole thing. Well, good go.
Meanwhile, on Earth, Armstrong's mother displayed the emotion-packed jubilation and thankfulness representative of those around the world.
Well, I was just hoping and praying everything would go well. And with touchdown, I must say, praise God, from whom all blessings flow.
But the mission was far from over. Anxious to explore the moon's surface, the Eagle crew skipped a scheduled rest period and prepared to take man's first step on the moon. Armstrong was first out of the hatch.
At the foot of the water, the surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder.
Man's first look at the moon's surface materials, and as expected, no green cheese.
I'm going to step off the way now.
Wearing a spacesuit to protect from 243 degrees above and 279 degrees below zero temperatures, Armstrong takes the long-awaited step.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Soon, Aldrin was out of the Eagle module, and the American flag was implanted. With it were left a collection of mementos, including flags of the 50 United States, greetings of goodwill from 72 nations, and a plaque reading,
Dear men from the planet Earth, first set foot upon the moon, July 1969, it came in peace for all mankind.
and then came a telephone call, the moon's first.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. Because of what you have done, it inspires us to redouble our efforts to bring peace and tranquility to Earth. For one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one. One in their pride in what you have done, and one in our prayers that you will return safely to Earth.
And return safely they did, beginning with a most remarkably perfect blast-off from the moon's surface.
Port stage, engine on access, proceed. Beautiful. 26, 36 feet per second up. Very smooth.
Redocking of the Eagle with the command ship Columbia took place flawlessly on the dark side of the moon. And then, with all 3 astronauts reunited in the Apollo 11, its engine fired for 2.5 minutes at 12:57 a.m. Tuesday during the 31st lunar orbit. The thrust sped the spacecraft to 5,700 miles per hour and away from the moon's pull toward home, the Earth. Left behind was the Soviet Lunar 15 craft, which had fallen to the moon's floor and become silent. During that quiet and perfectly routine homeward voyage, Apollo again reiterated the theme of peace and understanding that underscored the entire moon flight.
We've been particularly pleased with the emblem of our flight, depicting the U.S. Eagle, bringing the universal symbol of peace from the planet Earth to the moon, that symbol being the olive branch. It was our overall crew choice to deposit a replica of this symbol on the moon.
And bearing their space treasures, the three men splashed down in the Pacific Ocean southwest of Hawaii on the 8th day of their adventure. Aboard the USS Hornet recovery carrier waited President Nixon, who greeted the Apollo crew through the glass window of their isolation trailer.
I can tell you about all the messages we've received in Washington. They represent over 2 billion people on this earth, all of them who have had the opportunity through television to see what you have done. Gee, you look great. You feel as good as you look.
You're great. Feel just perfect, Mr. President.
Yeah. I was thinking, as you know, as you came down, that this is the greatest week in the history of the world since the creation, because the world is bigger, infinitely, and also the world has never been closer together before. And we just thank you for that. And now I think all of us would feel as I do that, in a sense, our prayers have been answered, and I think it would be very appropriate if Chaplain Pierto...
And thus, with heads bowed, in a moment of reverent thanks, the mission was complete.
A man on the moon was promised in this decade, and though some were unconvinced, the reality is with us this morning in the persons of astronauts Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins. We applaud their splendid exploits, and we pour out our thanksgiving for their safe return to us, to their families, to all mankind.
Truly a wonderful presentation, if you ask me. Thanks for watching, and God bless.